Hello, team. I've just been speaking for half an hour before realising I hadn't pressed start. Good morning. Welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is Ukraine War news update. First part thereof for the 23rd of January 2024. Oh my goodness, I'm going to have to go through all that again. Right. Where should we start? Usual place. The Ukrainian general staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply. You can find them in the description to the video below. And we have some massive losses for the Russians the day before. I don't quite know what's happened because the Russians are in the ascendancy in various areas of the front line. The Ukrainians are on the back foot on the ground in terms of troops and their access to ammunition and supplies and maybe artillery supplies. That's a challenging situation for the Ukrainians, yet they're posting figures like this. But not only that, actually there's a really good justification for these figures, judging on what is happening in terms of social media evidence and video evidence for these claims. So it's a bad day for the Russians, even though they might be posting some territorial gains. 960 personnel loss is at the high end of the range. It's almost at that iconic figure of 1,000. 22 tanks to lost in one day. That's well over the daily average, and that is a massive lot. 22 tanks. If the US or the UK, the US has got massive tank, they've got massive tank stockpiles, but the UK lost 22 tanks in a day. That's like, right, we're done. We're off ski here. That's like most of our tanks, operational tanks, or that would be absolutely huge. They posted that in one day. 59 armored personnel vehicles. What is going on? 51 artillery systems. It's absolutely smashing the daily averages here. 2 multiple launch rocket systems, 65 vehicles and fuel tanks. It's phenomenal. I'm sure that's the highest daily figure in that category, and 12 pieces of special equipment. I think 13 is the highest in that one, maybe. I'm not sure, but anyway, that's massively high. All of these losses from the Russians are just huge numbers, and that is not sustainable. Of course, the question always is, what are the Ukrainians losing? But I can guarantee they ain't losing that level of kit on a daily basis. Now, are we justified in believing these figures posted by the Ukrainian General Staff? Well, if you go to look at Andrew Perpetua's loss stats, and remember, you can click on the link that he posts alongside it, and you can look at the sheet and check out each piece of video evidence to support each of these claims. So these have happened. The videos are there. This isn't some kind of propaganda. This has happened. Now the list is huge here. It's just a huge amount of equipment lost. 3, maybe 4-1 Russian to Ukrainian losses. That is an absolutely unsustainable list. Now remember, and I remember, to bring this up again, to repeat myself, I do apologise, but Constantine on one of Andrew Perpetua's live streams was saying, look, he had fundraised for a drone for this unit. He gave the drone to the unit, and then some months later met the guy or was online with him or something, and the guy said, oh, you gave a drone to us. And he's like, oh, I've forgotten about that. How do you get on? He's like, oh, we've destroyed loads of stuff. He's like, oh, have you posted the footage of it? And the guy from the Ukrainian said, no, I haven't posted any. So this particular unit with drones from Constantine hadn't posted any of their stuff, if I remember correctly. And he's like, well, have you got it? He's like, yeah, I've got memory cards. I've got like 50, 100. I can't remember what the numbers. Huge numbers of equipment that has blown up. And it's like, and none of it had found its way to social media. And so when we look at these lists and we see a difference in the numbers posted by the General Staff and the numbers on the say Andrew Perpetua list or Oryx or War Spotting or whatever, you've got to remember that these lists are only a percentage of what has been destroyed. And that can account for that difference between these figures. I mean, at the end of the day, look, what is there here? Look, Russian losses in trucks and civilian vehicles. That's like at least a dozen there, right? 65 on this list. Now, if you upload a dozen like Bukankas or Kamaz trucks being blown up in one day, like, are you gonna? Well, what about the other 50? What about the other 53? Like, do we really need to post them? I mean, we posted a dozen. Everyone gets the idea. It's like, we don't need, like, that takes time. It takes goodness me, it takes me long enough to upload videos to the internet. Like, if you had to upload 65, is that time well spent for these units doing that? And so there isn't really good rationale to post all of the same every single day. We can't expect there to be one-to-one claim to evidence, to verifiable online evidence for these figures. So that there is understandably going to be a gap between the claims and the verifiable imagery online. Also, the other thing that I wonder is what the proportion of losses that drones are responsible for now is, because we heard previously, it was like, I remember seeing it go from 20% to 30% to 40%. I think I've seen a 50% claim as well, and this is going back some time. So I've been saying that, don't forget that, the one I remember most is the kind of 40% statistics. 40% of losses are drones, 60% artillery. You wonder about mines. I don't know where mines fit in there, but it could be that this is only half of the losses, because this skews for drones, and there's not a lot of evidence of artillery taking stuff out on lists like this. So, there will be a lot more to add on to this already massive, burgeoning list. Right, when we look at the Ukrainian losses, a couple of boats, comms equipment, comms tower, there is a Caesar there. We got some footage of that, and that would be a high-value bit of kit. And then just no new tanks. Tickled, I don't know, does this mean that a Lancet has bounced off it? Anti-drone cage there. So actually, that probably is that netting with the drone on top there. Lancet looks like, no, that wasn't a Lancet. It looks like protection cage held up. So tickled must mean that it wasn't even damaged. It was like bounced off. So you can take 2 bits of equipment off this list, so even that will improve the ratio. Then we go to the Russians' losses, and we have an electronic warfare station, surveillance equipment, excavator and recovery vehicles. The recovery vehicles fairly high value, but then look at the number of tanks: T-80s, T-72s, lots of different varieties there, T-62 as well. Just a lot of them on that list. And then abandoned and destroyed IFVs, a lot of those, and then a lot of damaged ones, BMP2s and 3s, BMDs, BTRs mainly, a couple of the older BMP ones, but mainly newer bits of kit. And then APCs, trucks and civilian vehicles. I mean, that's just a massive, that's millions and millions of dollars worth of kit right there. It's just an absolute shock over 24 hours for the Russians. I don't really know exactly why that is, but yeah, just a bad day at the office for them, and a good day for the Ukrainians, of course. Now, let's go and look at just, I guess, a couple of bits and pieces here. Oops, not like that. We won't. Let's get you back in there. Sorry about that. So, RDK reports an attack on a train 3,000 kilometers from Ukraine. So this is partisan activity taking place well within Russian territories there. On January the 20th, RDK fighters on the territory. So RDK, this appears to be the Russian volunteers fighting within often, these small incursions into Russia. Well, this is 3,000 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. So I don't quite know what's going on here, but this is really good news for the Ukrainians. To be able to derail a train with valuable cargo in Novosibirsk is really good news for the Ukrainians. When was the last time you heard about practical achievements by the Navalny team? 10 years in opposition, zero impact, living off the Western dollars. Oh, that's a bit of an agenda there for P-Star 1-1. But this is good news for the Ukrainians, and you want to see that kind of partisan activity taking place more and more. Right, Russian media is reporting the death of a commander of the 9th Assault Company Inter Brigade, Pyatnashka. He and one of his comrades died on the 20th during an assault on Avdiivka. Now, there is a Twitter handle that records all the Russian officers that are lost, and that's a continued thing. Of course, this is going to be happening on both sides, but what you get throughout the war is this dilution of experience and quality as both sides are attrited, and your experienced soldiers, unfortunately, there's more chance you're going to perish the longer you're fighting. That's how statistics work. That's how probability works, and so you will be constantly suffering from a lack of quality as that experience and those skill sets of your mid-level command are eradicated. It's just it's a challenge. We've heard from a lot of Russian individuals on videos recorded, intercepts and whatnot, as well, that you have the POW that was interviewed recently saying that he was in charge of a company, and he's like, yeah, but you're just a squaddy type thing, and he's like, people are put in charge of in these kind of mid-level officer positions who are not, or they're not NCOs, they're not officers. They're just, there's a lack of that expertise and that mid-level command in the Russian army. I'm sure it's a problem for the Ukrainians as well, but that means that they are going to be less able to prosecute successful maneuvers because they're relying on people who are being drafted in, constant recruitment and mobilization to fill those spaces left, by people who are now in body bags. All right, they're awaiting clarification, but possibly another Su-34 shot down near Kherson. I saw some chatter from Russian sources about this as well. So it seems to have happened, but I've actually not heard much since this. This was yesterday evening, but I've not heard much about that since then. So it may or may not have been a Su-34 shot down. That'd be good news for the Ukrainians. And here is the Caesar that we saw on the list. Definitely not in working order anymore. That is a high value bit of equipment. You are going to lose these, of course, now and again. One of the challenges of the Caesar, it's such a big piece of kit that it's very difficult to hide in a way that you can sort of secret a D20 howitzer under a bunch of foliage in a tree line or whatever. You ain't doing that easily with the Caesar. It's a big bit of kit. Anyway, moving on to distant strikes, we now come to missiles, cruise missiles and ballistic missiles. There was a big old wave last night. In fact, there were 41 missiles shot at Ukraine, and these caused quite a lot of wide-scale damage. Not so much from hitting their targets. A lot of them were shot down over cities and fell in residential areas, and it's this terrible situation where Russia is firing these missiles consistently over cities like Kyiv and Kharkiv, trying to hit potentially bona fide targets, or maybe trying to hit civilian infrastructure, and you are necessarily going to shoot them down because otherwise you just sit back and let Russia hit whatever they want with their missiles. So you're going to shoot them down. Of course, if Russia are going to fire these missiles consistently over big cities, then these missiles will fall consistently over big cities on residential areas and fire into residential blocks. As widespread damage has been caused, there's a number of deaths and injuries, and it's not cool. Russia do this so consistently and have done for 2 years, and we've got used to it. And yet, Russia do a false flag, what looks to be a false flag hit on Donetsk, and the mainstream media pick that up and run with the Russian narrative and report that almost with glee. Where's the reporting of this? Is this getting the same kind of raising the heckles of people as much? It just really, hackles, really annoys me. I'm incensed with how there is no international unity. Well, there is quite a bit of unity, but then, $61 billion still sitting, waiting to be given to Ukraine to help stop this. But it's not there. And in the meantime, this happens. Bloody annoying. Having said that, of 41 missiles, 21 are shot down. And although that seems like around 50% interception rate, which isn't great, actually, when you look at the types of missiles that we use, this is not too bad. All of the cruise missiles, the bog standard cruise missiles, are shot down. So 15 out of 15. 5 out of 12 Iskander-M ballistic missiles are shot down. That's actually pretty good interception rate for missiles that have a very low interception rate. That's almost 50%. 1 out of 2 Kh-59 guided air missiles is not, well, it's too small to really give any reliable appraisal of that. But then there were S-300 surface-to-air missiles used in their ground attack mode that were not shot down, and none of the Kh-22 supersonic missiles. But, that's not bad stats, all things considered. But with every one of those missiles, what goes up must come down. So if you successfully shoot down a cruise missile, and it's anywhere near human beings, then you're gonna have some trouble. So all of those 41 missiles will have exploded somewhere. Right. What I must say is 41 is not a lot of missiles. And I'm going to go back to, you would if you could. You aren't, so you can't. It's just, this to me speaks to a lack of production capacity. Because if you could fire a massive wave, you would fire a massive wave. So this is 41 is not a huge wave, and we have not had many cruise missiles and ballistic missiles sent over the last month or two. We're in a very low period at a time when we were expecting this to be a very difficult winter for the Ukrainians. We're now well into January, almost approaching February, and Russia is occasionally sending out these medium-sized waves. Now, it could be that they're stockpiling for a massive attack, but we keep saying that. The point is, though, that also talks to a lack of production. Because if you're producing 500 missiles a month, then you could be firing 400 missiles and stockpiling 100. So 10 months down the line, you can fire a whole other wave of 1,000 missiles, right? So you're obviously not being able to do that because you're not firing that. And, if you need to stockpile, it just means you're not producing enough anyway. So whatever I think the excuse for the Russians not firing this level of missiles consistently, whatever you say, there is just not enough production. Unless they just don't need to fire missiles. It's just like, 41. We'll wait a couple of months. And then maybe another 20, 30. They're not really bothered. I don't know really why we're firing the missiles. It's a bit of a laugh. Like that's obviously not the case, right? So they're going to want to be like, surely if you said to Russia now, like, here's 2,000 missiles, would you like to fire them tonight in one night? 2,000 missiles. If we gave you the ability to fire 2,000 missiles in one night, would you do it? And if the answer is yes, we would, then they want to do it. They would like to do it if they had the ability to do it. So if they aren't doing it, they don't have the ability to do it. This is what this says. And I'm sorry, there is no other explanation for this. Now, throw on top of that this. So this is Philip O'Brien saying, worth monitoring. The pace of Russian missile attacks has actually slowed, and the Ukrainian Air Force is claiming that the ones they are using are older and malfunctioning. You can interpret that in two very different ways. So I talked about the old 1962, was it, anti-ship missile, big old ship missile that was fired the other day. And I said, you would only fire that if you're running really low. I mean, surely. And a few of you, one person particularly said, well, actually, if you got it, you might as well use it. And so there is that, and that does kind of make sense. However, if you're saying, right, we need to resurrect that old firing mechanism and fire that really old missile we're going to have to get out of like long-term storage, put it on that, all that time and effort, where instead we could fire another 5 cruise missiles, all of that effort to do that. Like and these newer missiles have got more chance of hitting correctly or whatever. I'm sure you would do. I just think that if you're going to bother going to the effort of getting a 1960s missile onto a firing platform and fire it, it means you really kind of have to, because you don't have that many other options. I still think that. Okay, so Ewan McDonald here says, in what Yuri Ignat, the spokesperson for the Air Force, the Ukrainian Air Force, says, some of the Russian missiles did not reach their targets due to weapons being expired, malfunctioning, or due to the operation of Ukrainian electronic warfare systems. So that is really important. In fact, electronic warfare systems are also possibly doing a lot of work in air defenses at the moment. It could be that, I don't know, it could be the Ukrainians have got some new capabilities that they've designed, or other countries have given them on the sly, and they're using them much further back behind the line so that you can't get that very important technology stolen. Sorry, I just had a phone call coming in. Right, sorry. Now, these missiles missing their targets, not reaching their targets due to obsolescence and malfunction, is not good news for the Russians as well. And that fits into the idea that they don't have the production capacity where it should be. And it could be that the ones they are producing are also not being produced to the high enough specifications or quality due to a lack of components, so on and so forth. So I think this is all looking better for the Ukrainians going forward, even though days like today really hurt for the Ukrainians. So when we look at the footage that is coming out, it is just really the widespread footage of, lots of civilian infrastructure being damaged, particularly Kharkiv, but also Kiev, not necessarily in Kiev it will be from falling missiles from air defense, because they have either 100% or very close to interception rate. In Kharkiv, that often gets hit by S-300 missiles, as you can see here in the region. A health camp nearer to the front line in Balakaya was hit with S-300 surface-to-air missiles using the ground attack mode. A gas pipe was hit. Authorities in Kharkiv are actually 3 people have died, lots of people injured, people under rubble, just a lot of civilian infrastructure taken out. And again, to repeat myself, if you're going to fire missiles consistently over massive cities, you're going to expect them to be shot down. This will happen. Whose fault is that? It's Russia's fault, right? If you're living in Washington or New York right now, or wherever you are living, and you see a bunch of missiles being shot from another nation, you would expect your nation, your own air defenses and your own air force to shoot those missiles down. And this is what happens, though. Whose fault is it? You're not going to blame your own air force. They're doing what they have to do so that those missiles don't hit the targets and kill people somewhere else and take out really high-value strategic targets that will incapacitate you as a country going forward. In Kiev, 9 have been injured. 2 areas of the capital are affected. Here's some imagery of this. So these would be falling missiles as a result of air defense. Air defense is working. In fact, we've got some footage I'll show you in a minute. Death tolls moved to 5, 3 in Kiev. Actually, 1 in Kiev now and 1 in Dnipropetrovsk. But there could well be more by now. This will be a good few hours old. High-rise buildings being hit, private houses, farm buildings, cars. Just a lot of injuries. People sheltering in metro stations, which is par for the course these days. And then, imagine if this was your home. Suddenly lost everything, everything that you own, and all of those memories, and possibly members of your family. This is not cool, and I'm having another angry day that there is this not overwhelming unity against this, that Russia is able to get away with this, and they haven't been kicked off the United Nations Security Council, and there isn't unilateral, completely unified disgust at what Russia is doing, and we've still got an impasse in Congress. It's just it annoys the hell out of me, that the Russians do some false flag, or what looks like a false flag operation in Donetsk, shelling a marketplace, and then saying it's Ukraine, and then all the media outlets report that, oh my goodness, terrible, and this happens on a consistent basis, and everyone's like, Russia. Just absolutely infuriating. Just there's so much footage coming out of this kind of stuff taking place, and the deaths and injuries resulting from it is just really annoying. As War Translated says, Dmitry says, is Russia going to request an emergency UN meeting after it shelled random civilian buildings in Kharkiv, Kiev, and Dnipro? They use their crappy missiles indiscriminately. And then you have dogs saying Ukraine needs to give up its territory to these animals. Robert Fico, Slovakian Prime Minister, saying, well, Ukraine is going to have to give up territory to Russia. So what? So Russia get to do this to Ukraine, and then people sit by and say, yep, and now you're going to have to give up some of your territory to the people that have done that. Yeah, because we're all for the bullies winning. Yeah, we love a bit of naked aggression and stealing other people's territory. It's horrific. Good news here is a Browning machine gun took out a cruise missile, which is pretty good. So that's a low tech solution to a high tech problem. Obviously, you can't rely on that, but it's cheaper if you can take out a cruise missile with a Browning machine gun. Now, here is a cruise missile falling in Kyiv. As you can see, it's smoking, it's on fire. What goes up must come down. So air defense is doing its job, but that is landing in a residential area. Or commercial area or similar. So, it's you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. And as Ilya Ponomarenko says, the former Kyiv Independent journalist, the Kremlin apparently believes that if it annihilates a certain number of residential apartment blocks with their residents inside, we in Ukraine will finally get to love Russia and will gladly be its colony again. Now, going back to what Ukraine have done, although I don't think there's too much evidence of them doing it last night, but certainly in the last few days where we've seen Ukraine hit deep into Russian territories, oil terminals, and in Smolensk we see a repair facility being hit and then another oil facility somewhere else. So you quote, Ukraine received a new long-range weapon. The strikes on facilities in the Leningrad region near St. Petersburg indicate that such means have appeared at the disposal of the AFU, according to the director of Defense Express. The distance between St. Petersburg and Ukrainian borders is 700 to 900 kilometers, but to bypass Russian air defense, the trajectory could be up to 1,250 kilometers. And indeed, 1,250 is what other people have been saying that the Ukraine is able to fire now. Trentolenko says the Ukrainian transportation campaign against Russia with its assault drones proceeds apace. 30% of the train engines for Russian army railway logistics are diesel powered. Why is he saying that? Well, a couple of days ago, 3,100 tons of fuel was destroyed in the Ukrainian drone strike on the Rosneft oil facility in Bryansk, which is, not too far from the Ukrainian border, and makes you wonder why that hadn't been targeted already. But my goodness, that is some serious damage being done. That's one where the fire raged for several days in those big oil storage facilities. That will have a meaningful effect on Russia's ability to function domestically, but also for its armed services that rely on that, and its logistics that rely on that fuel. So Sevastopol last night saw some explosions. I don't know any details about that, but there have been a number of strikes that we don't know anything about that have apparently been Storm Shadow or Scalp cruise missiles doing their thing in Crimea. So there's a high probability that some really high level targets have been taken out in the last 3 or 4 days that we just don't know about. It's a bit like that whole patrol vessel that was sunk, and that's been confirmed. The ISW has confirmed that patrol vessel that was sunk at a pier in Sevastopol harbour, right? That comes out like 2 weeks after it happened, or however long, on some, OSINT people doing some looking through satellite imagery. It's like, oh, there's a whole patrol vessel, Russian naval patrol vessel that's been sunk, and yet no one knew about it. These missiles are that was thought to be naval drones, which is interesting in itself, especially since that was in the harbour, that the drones have been able to get in. That's interesting and hasn't come out formally from like the Ukrainians releasing footage or anything. But we've got cruise missiles doing that kind of thing fairly regularly, and we don't always hear about it. Now, talking about these strikes going deep into Russia, we'll talk about how there are these holes in the air defenses on St. Petersburg and Moscow, as those air defense vehicles, the S-300s, S-400s even, had been, over the course of 2 years, being brought down to the front line to replace ones that had been lost near the front line, or just the need for them on the front lines, given the networks they need to cover Crimea and all the Donbass occupied regions. So they bring them down from different areas of Russia, and that leaves gaps in Russia, and now they're taking them back. But the question is, where they're taking them from. So following Ukraine's successful drone attacks on areas near St. Petersburg, air defense systems have been moved into the area. This motorist got holed up as they blocked the road trying to turn an S-300 around. So this is near St. Petersburg, I understand. So that is, this is what you would expect. But the question is, like I said to you previously, Imagine it's a bed where you've got a blanket that's too small for the bed. You pull it into one corner to keep you warm, and your feet get cold down there, or that area of the bed doesn't get covered. So you pull it down that way and then somewhere else. And wherever you're pulling it, you are going to expose areas of your bed. Well, wherever you put the air defenses in Russia or occupied territories of Ukraine, you're going to expose somewhere else because you don't have a blanket big enough. So you are pulling these air defenses from somewhere else. The question for the Ukrainians, and I'm sure they'll have a good handle on this, is where they pulled that S-300 from, where is now weak. Right, now on to other bits and pieces. So Russian energy, but it's connected to what I was just talking about. Russian energy company Novatek, so this is the oil terminal that was hit in St. Petersburg, is likely to resume large-scale operations at its Ust-Luga processing complex and Baltic Sea terminal within weeks, at worst months, following a drone attack. Reportedly 2 storage tanks and a pumping station were damaged. So that's what was coming out yesterday from no reports there. But then this came out from Tendar. The damage to the oil and gas terminal in Ust-Luga, Russia, is apparently worse than initially expected. According to analysts at the Moscow-based BCS brokerage, it might take weeks, maybe even months. So this to me, when I was reading this, like weeks and months was sold as like, oh, it's not long to get it back up. Tendar is saying that is a long time, and actually that's and I would agree with this, because if this is your second biggest terminal and you get most of your money in from hydrocarbons exports, to lose this for weeks, possibly months, every single day, that is millions of barrels of oil or LNG or whatever goes out of there. If you're not having that for weeks, possibly months, that's money not coming in. But this is a huge hit. So Russia is apparently worse than initially expected. According to analysts, weeks, possibly months, until the facility will return to significant capacity. 2 Ukrainian-made drones have successfully enforced sanctions on Russian hydrocarbon trades. You can be sure we are talking not only of millions, but billions of US dollars, which will not come, or at the very least will be severely delayed. Penalties for not fulfilling contractual duties are not even included. So you can then have possibly other nations saying, well, you said that we were going to get that oil on this date and we're not, and in that contract is a penalty, so you now have to pay us XYZ, or you let us off the next shipment a certain amount. So this will cost Russia in many different ways, but even if it's delayed, that is losing it, because you're losing it for that period of time. You may eventually get it back then, but then that stuff will be delayed, and so it's just a knock-on effect. You are probably going to be losing that outright, and so this is a huge issue for the Russians. Activists of the Yellow Ribbon Partisan movement unfurled the Ukrainian flag on top of a mountain in Crimea here, which is pretty cool. To me, I mean, it's amazing, but that does look photoshopped to me. I hope that's actually happened, but it does look a bit, raising that's definitely a real flag, Ukrainian flag in occupied Makivka. So people, riskily showing their sympathies there. But I do wonder about that. That does look. I mean, that's great if it happened. It's just I hope it has happened, but who knows? And also trying to tell how big an area that is. Okay, we'll move on. About 900 Ukrainian police officers who defected to the Russians have already been identified. This was announced by the head of the National Police of Ukraine, Ivan Vyhivsky. Now, I do wonder about things like this. What happens if the Ukrainians prevail and you get this situation whereby it's a bit like France after the Vichy, after the end of the Second World War, with all the collaborators. You had all the shame, women getting their heads shaved and being publicly shamed in the streets for being collaborators. Will that kind of thing happen in Ukraine? Or will there have to be some kind of amnesty? I don't know, but it's interesting that they know predominantly who they are. Right, a scientist in Russia has called for Putin's arrest and demanded an official investigation from Russian police. Astra published a complaint, but not the scientist's name. He points out that Putin said they have had conquered parts of Ukraine. It proves he started an aggressive war. That kind of stuff. You more of this you want getting out. You want people to feel that other Russians think what they might think in the deepest, darkest recesses of their minds. So when they have the audacity to even think that Putin is not great, that Putin has done the wrong thing, that the war is wrong, they might worry about the thought police. You want to hear and see these other opinions that that make you realize you're not alone and gives you confidence to have those opinions and possibly even voice them. And that gives a momentum to hopefully a growing sense of protest. That would be the ideal, right? And I'm going to leave you with this bit of a solo piloting challenge here. So, who says pilots can't have fun? Yeah. I wonder what they're trying to say there. Yeah. Take that, Cyprus. Anyway, please like, subscribe, and share. Really appreciate your support. Toodle Pips. Speak to you soon.